Hello again, everyone. This is Don. How are you? It's been a long time, I know. Been very busy with work, so I haven't had a chance to update folks, check up the recent events, but I had to weigh in on this latest incident with Trump bombarding 59 Tomahawks onto Syria the other day. And I just wanted to preface this by thanking some individuals who've been sending me some information, one in particular, and they've done some great research, and I'm just going to put some information out here real fast, but preface this with the definition of the word propaganda. Number one here is information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person, group, movement, institution, nation, etc. When I was growing up, I remember all the stories we heard about the Russian propagandists, and particularly the news service TASS, the official government news service, and nobody could believe the Russians' media reports because of that. And that's what we're living in now in the United States, and the whole world is affected by our media. And how do we know this? In 2000, let's see here, which article is it? 2013, all of the corporations who own our major media, 6 of them, I think 6 or 7 major corporations, were unleashed and enlisted by the U.S. government in sort of a hidden extra in the National Defense Authorization Act to be used for propaganda against both foreign and domestic citizens abroad and at home. Individuals quoting the need for furthering the war on terror and countering internet sites that were supporting or recruiting for Islamic terrorist events needed to be confronted, and so the government authorized $4 billion per year to be spent by the Pentagon on propaganda aimed at the American public, as well as $202 million spent by the Department of Defense on misinformation operations in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2011. Here's an example. Currently, the Pentagon is using sock puppet fake handles on social media sites to purvey false information, harass users, and enact psyops to influence Americans. Okay, so with all that said, you can go into further research on this. They're free to use media, to news information sites, websites, and even films. Okay, it was further even more delineated and enhanced, I should say, last year at the end of 2016 when they were in the passage of the new Defense Authorization Act, inserting more legislation to help counter foreign propaganda and disinformation by unleashing U.S. government further strategy and propaganda. And so the reason I'm bringing this out is we cannot trust the reports that we hear daily. One of the things that really upsets me is that when we have these false flag events, there's no investigation into the real facts of the incident. Okay, there's an assumed government position which is quickly stated, and then there's usually a character who's paraded out in front, and all the other witnesses are hidden away, blocked. You cannot, as in San Bernardino, you cannot speak to them whatsoever. They get cordoned off, bust out, and bust away into a different holding area. Reporters aren't allowed to do any investigation. There's just a simple narrative that gets backed up over and over by a certain individual that gets paraded out. And here's one incident or personality on this recent chemical attack and Trump's reaction, and CNN, the reporter seems to feign sort of an objective skepticism, and then at the end of the interview you'll see that she changes her response or her attitude.
I woke up for some reason. I couldn't sleep. I woke up I saw a lot of texts on my phone. I saw the news. I cried out of joy. I jumped. I thanked God. I don't know. I was overwhelmed. We've been asking for protection. We've been asking for consequences for more than 6 years.
Okay, let's pause it right there. This individual says that he survived the chemical attack in 2013. Well, that's 4 years ago, but now he's saying we've been asking for help and assistance here for more than 6 years. And as many of you know, that chemical attack in 2013 was investigated by many individuals from the UN, and they found all the claims from the UK and the United States that Assad had used those weapons, chemical weapons of mass destruction, were false, and that if anything, those attacks were conducted by the rebels, largely composed of Al-Qaeda affiliated groups, financed and supported by Western military alliance, were responsible for the 2013 chemical attacks. Moreover, as confirmed in the earlier reports, the Al-Qaeda rebels were being trained in the use of chemical weapons by specialists on contract to the Pentagon. So, it was this individual around when the rebels were using those or being trained on those weapons, and whatever happened in 2013, they tried to blame it on Assad. That is when he was able to experience the horrific effects of sarin gas. There's a lot of questions going on. We all know, those who are up and aware, that the most recent attack, chemical attack, appears to be false in on many accounts. As far as the white helmets individuals, they are very, very, just not who they were supposedly meant to be. And I won't go into all of that right now. I just want to continue on. This individual here, he's referred to by gentleman Frank Luntz. Maybe you've seen him. He's a media personality. I think I've seen him on Fox News in the past. Pretty heavy hitter there for the conservative movement. And he refers to this individual as a Syrian rebel fighter and 2013 chemical weapons survivor. So he's involved with Al-Qaeda. He's involved with those that were funded by the U.S. He's a rebel fighter. Okay, so of course he is going to be used to be paraded out over and over again in the American media. That is the propagandists now for the CIA and the deep state, the Zionists, the elites. And just as more evidence here, this individual is constantly tweeting articles on his Twitter account that are very anti-Assad and anti-Russian and pro-American, pro-CIA, deep state type interviews. He is being paraded out in all the different medias over and over again that are owned, the corporate medias. He talks about where he's been in the New York Times. I'll be on Fox News. He's on MSNBC, and of course the CNN article. So just to say that if you really want real reporting, you cannot trust the mainstream media. It would be much better to take, for instance, this is a Canadian journalist who has been to Syria multiple times over the last couple of years. Let's just listen to a little bit of what she's experienced.
Many times to Homs, to Malula, to Latakia, Tartus, Siaf, Sweda, and again Aleppo 4 times. And I mention these because I think it's important people realize I have, wherever I've gone, I've spoken in Arabic to the people I'm speaking with. What Donna, what Sarah have said, that the people support their Armenian government is absolutely true. Whatever you hear in the corporate media is the complete opposite. And on that note, what you hear in the corporate media, and I will name them, BBC, Guardian, New York Times, etc., on Aleppo is also opposite of reality. Aleppo since 2012 has been inhabited by different terrorist factions, among them al-Nusra, among them the so-called Free Syrian Army, which has committed the same heinous acts of terrorism as al-Nusra, as ISIS, as Ahad al-Sham, as Nuruddin al-Zinki, which beheaded a 12-year-old Palestinian child, and somehow is still deemed moderate. Since 2012, these areas of Aleppo, which have now recently been freed, their occupation by these terrorist factions has meant the greater Aleppo, the 1.5 million plus population of greater Aleppo, have suffered sieges denying them food and medicine. They've suffered for years a want of electricity and water, and they've suffered daily bombardment by these terrorists of mortars, of gas canister bombs, which are improvised and made locally, of water heater bombs, which are even more powerful and can level floors of entire buildings, of conventional weapons like Grad rockets supplied by the West, and etc. Western-backed terrorists in pockets of Aleppo. There are still mortars and gas canister bombs raining down, and people are still dying in Aleppo. This is another reason why the liberation and securing of these areas is imperative.
Okay, I want to let you go ahead and watch her on your own. That's Eva Bartlett, Canadian journalist. And just say there are other great reporters who have actually traveled to and fellowshipped with the Syrian people in their sufferings, and it's much better to rely on their information than to anything the mainstream media is putting out there on a daily basis. Remember, they're being funded by a budget of $4 billion a year to further their war propaganda. And if you haven't seen Wesley Clark's video about how he was approached in 2000, 2001, about the agenda of PNAC, and if you don't know what that is, Project for the New American Century, you can study that, and the Greater Israel Project basically is a Zionist plan to upset many of the countries in the Mideast and to establish Greater Israel from the Euphrates to, I guess, the Mediterranean. They have upset and destabilized Libya and Somalia and Sudan and other countries. Syria was on their list, and next is Iran, and that's where this is all going to. As you all were probably horrified when you heard about this whole incident, especially of the tomahawks being launched, I found it was very interesting that one of the first persons to come out and praise Trump was Netanyahu. And he was saying how that tomahawk assault was a message not only for Assad, but also for Tehran and for Pyongyang, North Korea. So this has been in their works for such a long time, and it seems now that they are desperate. You remember Trump made the comment that we were going to back off and allow Assad regime to exist and not interfere and let the Syrian people take over and decide for themselves, which is their sovereign right, and they should have never been interfered with to begin with. However, 2 days after that, we see this chemical attack. And why would Assad use chemical weapons at this point when he had everything going in his direction? He had regained most of Aleppo. He was making victories and progress ever since the Russians began helping him last year. Why would he need to turn around and use chemical weapons? Who would rather have had a real motive to use chemical weapons than to bring in world condemnation against Assad? It would have been those same rebels who were trained to use those weapons, and most likely, according to the UN, did use them in 2013. And so I'm going to just leave it, I guess, there for right now. Just again, make sure that you do your research. You understand that we cannot trust the American media, because nobody knows, in this interview here, nobody knows. I'm not doubting this individual's credentials completely, because I don't know him. I can't really say. But based on the all the facts that we have from 9/11 to all the false flags that have been going on over the last dozen years and more now, who's to say who is a plant? Who is to say that if this anchor woman is actually a real reporter or a CIA agent? Who's to say he is not also a CIA agent? We don't know. How can we know, given the fact that the government has authorization to use propaganda and psyops against the American people? We are actually paying our taxes to the government, allowing them to deceive us. If you think about that, that's the way the legislation is right now. Do your research, folks. Stay informed. Get real reports from people on the ground. And until next time.